It's really exciting to be here. And speaking of exciting, these are really exciting times to be eating, I was going to say vegan, vegetarian, on a plant-based diet. I mean, there's a difference between those terms, but it's a very exciting time to be eating compassionately because there's a rapidly growing interest in this. I hesitate to say hip because I don't want to make it sound like it's a temporary thing, it's a fad that's going to come and go. Veganism isn't going to come and go, and the reason for that is all of the implications, environmental, animal well-being, human health, the global issues, they aren't going to go away, and there's such a profound connection between how we eat and those issues. So we're not talking about a fad here. Speaking of Loving Hut, a restaurant chain that didn't exist 3 years ago. There are now 160 of them. It's a vegan restaurant chain. There's 160 of them in 19 countries. So that's pretty rapid. One other thing I have to mention, we have Dennis Kucinich here, the first vegan member of Congress in US history. Wow, how exciting. It's also an exciting time to be an ethologist. That is somebody who studies animal behavior. That's my specialty. I'm not an expert in politics, so I'm not going to go there anymore. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my area of expertise, which is animal behavior. Obviously, it connects to what the kind of lifestyle choices many people in this room are making, because what we're not eating today is animals. It was kind of taboo to talk about animal emotions and animal feelings and animal minds. Today we have a journal called Animal Cognition. Following a visit to the vet, one of my two cats, Micah, the male, was so traumatized that he spent 40 hours upstairs. He didn't come downstairs to eat. And he wasn't even the one who'd been to the vet. It was his sister, Megan. So that little anecdote is an illustration of just how intensely animals can feel emotions. Cats hate change. They hate any kind of upset of their normal routine. Anyone who's lived with cats knows that. Scientists are asking questions now, interesting questions about animal emotions. Dogs do something subconsciously that we all do, and that is when we look at a face, we glance left first, because that side of the face in our asymmetrical brains conveys more emotional information. And dogs have been living with us and manipulating us for about 15,000 years. And they have learned subconsciously to glance left, get a little more read on the individual. What's that person thinking? Animals, and this is the general take-home message in terms of emotions that I want to touch on with these studies, these last two studies in particular, long-term emotions. They undermine a common assumption we make about other animals, which is that they only feel in the moment. It's just how they are right now. Just simply not true. These studies show that these animals have long-term moods and dispositions. They can become depressed, they can become pessimistic, and they can be joyous and optimistic. Well, rats have been found in a series of studies to show a very pronounced pleasurable response to being flipped on their backs and tickled in the belly. This is something rats do when they're young. And studies show, and scientists love to measure things, that a rat who is expecting to be flipped on his or her back and tickled in the belly will run to the human hand who's going to do that 4 times as quickly as will a rat who's expecting to be petted on the nape of the neck. They like both, but being tickled is more, apparently, more pleasurable for them. They also give 7 times more of these ultrasonic vocalizations, chirps, that are associated with positive affect or good feelings in rats. There's decent scientific evidence coming to light showing that animals have emotional, subjective feelings that are similar to ours. What about a gorilla joke? And this isn't a joke about a gorilla, it's a joke by a gorilla, because humor is another aspect, an interesting possibility in non-humans. We know it's something that we have, a sense of humor. We already know rats have joy. What about sort of a humor in the cognitive sense that we can experience? Well, Coco, the famous gorilla, the matriarch of the Gorilla Foundation, she's learned close to 1,000 words in sign language, so she can give us quite an interesting window into her inner life. She told a joke once, first just to say she does like wordplay. She will sign, when she's in a happy mood, she may sign cocoa and nut for coconut. And she once put a straw to her nose and signed thirsty elephant. I can't do the signs, I don't know it, but she knows all those signs. Her joke was that one day her teacher was interested in assessing her sense of color, her perception of color. So the teacher held up a white towel and asked Coco to sign the color of the towel, and Coco signed red. So the teacher, looking very patient, you don't want to lead the witness, held the towel up and asked again. Coco once again signed red with the beginnings of a grin, a gorilla grin creeping over her face. And then so the teacher patiently asked one more time, and Coco signed red and then proceeded to remove a piece of lint from the towel that was red, a piece of red lint. So the joke's on you, teacher. Goats and sheep, popular spring animal sanctuary. I've been there with my daughter Emily. We're massaging the backs of sheep because it feels nice, the warmth on our fingers. I figure they might like it. Well, I think they do like it because I stopped and I looked away, and then I felt this scraping on my foot boot, and it was the sheep essentially asking me to continue. I've had that happen numerous times with goats and sheep there. They're like dogs. They come and nuzzle you for more. They like it. So really pretty complicated stuff going on in these animals' relatively small brains. There's a lot going on there. It doesn't take a lot of neurons to make a complex cognitive being, and they have billions of neurons in their brains too. Rats rarely will pull a lever to release food into a neighboring cage if there's no rat in the neighboring cage. You put a rat in that cage, they're going to release that lever a lot, and pull a lever to release food. There's someone there, someone's going to benefit. The rat isn't getting any reward who's pushing the lever. They just do it. They're social animals. They want to help others. Chimpanzees will help a struggling actor pick something up spontaneously. No reward. If the human is these actors, they've got stuff in their hands and they're trying to pick up the pencil and they can't. The chimp will rush over and pick it up for them. There's a number of studies like that coming out. The fact that scientists are looking at these sort of things is interesting. Mice have been shown to show empathy for another mouse in pain. Mozu was a Japanese macaque, the species on the cover of my book, who was born with a terrible physical handicap. She had no hands and no feet. And you might think, based on the kind of message you get in a nature documentary, that animal's not going to live very long. Well, she lived into full adulthood and had 5 young, raised them successfully. She didn't do it by herself. She was the benefit of being in a society where other beneficent individuals helped her. I think the take-home message of this sort of thing, and this is just a little glimpse into some of the exciting science that's coming to light, and not to suggest that science is the only window through which we can learn to appreciate animals. It's not. But as a scientist, I feel it's a scientist who's a vegan who really wants to change human attitudes towards animals. It's a responsibility I hold to bring a lot of this science to light, which people don't see. Because what these studies show is that animals are sentient. They can feel good things, they can feel bad things. They can suffer, they can feel pleasure. And I believe sentience is the bedrock of ethics. The foundation of our moral systems is simply that others can have good days and bad days. They can feel pain, they can suffer, and they can have joy, they can experience pleasures as well. Sentience is the key. And other animals, given that they have these capacities, they have lives that matter. Lives worth living. They're individuals, they're unique. To paraphrase the great American philosopher Tom Reagan, they don't merely have a biology, they have a biography as well. Well, where the rubber meets the road in our relationship with animals is food, is meat, it's dairy products, because 98 of every 100 animals that humans cause to suffer are suffering to go into our mouths. So being vegan, and for that matter being vegetarian, I consider that the holy grail of personal activism for animals, because that is making an immediate positive impact on them every day, several times a day. You spare animals a life of suffering. And really, I tell people, we will achieve little for animals if we advocate for their well-being between bites of a cheeseburger. It really has to be a personal, activist decision. It's just not enough to talk about it and write about it that helps, but really taking personal action is where it's really at. And that's why I choose a vegan lifestyle. That's why I'm so delighted to share this occasion for you. And I won't be accountable for this prediction or this hope, because as a vegan, I probably won't live beyond 150 years. But I do believe that we are on the cusp of the greatest social revolution ever to happen, if I may put so much grandeur into that. I think the recognition of animals as things we shouldn't eat will be a huge, massive revolution if and when it happens. And I think we're very much moving in that direction. We have to sink pretty low before we start to get it, and we've really reached close to a nadir. And I think there's a lot of very positive signs, bright lights, like Dennis Kucinich and others who are showing that we have a new way of living. And so, as I say, I won't be responsible for this because I won't be around for this prediction, but I do predict that humankind will look back on the 21st century as the century for the animals. Thanks for listening to me today.